President Biden held the first big event of his campaign, a rally with union workers yesterday in Philadelphia. Several of the nation's most powerful unions, including the AFL-CIO, American Federation of Teachers, and the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, endorsed Biden on Friday. Biden went in turn criticized Republicans, saying that their policies, in his words, would hurt the working class.
Because let me tell you something. When Republicans comes after what I've done, when they come back to try to get rid of all these clean energy investments, they try to stop the plan on infrastructure, when they try to do these things, guess what? They're coming for your jobs. They're coming for your jobs. They're coming for your future. They're coming for the future we're building for your kids and your grandkids.
There are Republicans with the former President Donald Trump's federal indictment just days ago. There's a lot of talk about this as we head into the 2024 presidential race. I want to bring in our political panel this morning. Jack Kalavritinos is a Republican strategist and former official in the Bush and Trump administrations. Nicole Brener-Schmitz, Democratic strategist and consultant with NBS Strategies. Thanks, both of you, for being with us this Sunday morning. Coming up at 9 o'clock, Shannon Bream is going to have Tim Scott on, and one of the other candidates in this race. Jack, it's been fascinating to watch your Republican Party candidates this week try to maneuver and manage around Donald Trump. He is the tree in the middle of the road right now. They all have to deal with him. So talk to me about what you're seeing. Some of them, like Chris Christie, are going after him. Some of them are like Mike Pence, are kind of shaking his head at the FBI, but not really saying what they do pardon-wise. How difficult is this for Republican candidates to navigate this right now?
First, happy Father's Day to you.
Happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you. It is challenging, and that is an interesting analogy about the tree in the road. I mean, Tim Scott, you start with him. I mean, I think he's one of the most promising of all the candidates, together with Governor DeSantis. It is challenging because this has never happened before. A sitting president has never had his DOJ, indict a sitting president. It's always about Trump. He sucks up a lot of the oxygen. Karl Rove said in his op-ed that this is an unforced error. This did not have to happen. So it is challenging because at least half of America believes there's a two-tiered system right now. And so for these candidates to be able to make the case that the DOJ has been weaponized, at the same time run against Donald Trump is challenging.
At the same time, though, it's a contrast when you look at what the White House has been doing. Not saying much about this, pretty much trying to distance themselves from this. This is the president's attorney general. This is the president, who's in office right now, where it's his Justice Department. Shouldn't the president of the United States at least say something about this? I mean, we're in an unprecedented moment in history here.
We are, but what he's doing is letting the legal system in this country take its course. They appointed a special counsel. The administration is allowing the law to do its job. He's going to have the same kind of trial as anyone else, and that's the point they're trying to resonate, and that's what they're trying to show the American people. No one is above the law, including if you're a former president, and you're going to go through the same system and have the same treatment as anyone else who was found to be indicted with these same charges.
But go ahead.
I mean, no one is above the law, but whatever happened to Hillary Clinton? I mean, she set up a separate server in her home and then destroyed evidence after Congress had asked. And there was no law there was no prosecution of her. And what about Joe Biden right now? Where's the special counsel with these bribery allegations? So the American people believe that DOJ has been weaponized against one party, and no one is above the law.
Because we have Republicans continuing to megaphone this, right? This victimization, spinning it off to talk about Hillary Clinton again. It was looked into. It's been dealt with. And what Donald Trump did is completely separate from Hillary Clinton. It needs to be treated as its own case.
Well, one of the reasons Hillary Clinton wasn't prosecuted was because Hillary Clinton wasn't charged with a crime. But there is something going on right now that is of interest to a lot of people, and that's the investigation into Hunter Biden. When Republicans bring this up, people say, well, no, you're just trying to distract from the conversation of Trump. But are we going to be able to get to a point where we can say we can walk and chew gum at the same time? A former president can be charged with a crime and will face justice, but at the same time, we need a clear answer as to whether or not the son of the current president of the United States was doing things that he shouldn't be doing.
And the Republicans have been looking into this. The Oversight Committee has spent a great deal of time and energy and effort, and House Republicans continue to. So they're doing their work on that.
But where are the Democrats, and where's the rest of the media to be saying there are serious allegations about bribery? It's not just Hunter Biden with his laptop. We're talking about bribery allegations, that money was funneled to the Biden family, and there's deafening silence. One could say maybe even this prosecution is to basically create all of this circus over here while there's not been an investigation of these Biden potential issues.
But Jack, the fact that Hunter Biden is being looked at, doesn't that punch a hole in what the Republicans saying about, oh, well, where's Hunter? What about Hunter? He is being investigated.
I mean, it's being slow rolled. I mean, everything about this Trump matter has been on a fast track, but investigated. I don't really see any evidence of anything moving forward with this very serious issue.
All right, I want to talk about the economy right now, because this is the thing that, you know, James Carville always says the economy's stupid. In large part, that's how people make these decisions about who's going to be president. Where are we at right now? There were some good numbers recently on the job front. Joe Biden, as we saw at the beginning of this program, back out there on the stump. It seemed very old school retail Democratic Union politics there, but Joe Biden, if these numbers are what they say they are, shouldn't he be doing better in the polls than he is right now? And why do you think he's not doing better?
Look, I think the American people are going to take a hard look at the economy and what's going on. We're seeing inflation go down. We're seeing job numbers go up. And we haven't even begun to see.
But he doesn't seem to be getting credit for it in the polls. Why is that?
I think people are taking a look at what's going on, and they like to weigh their options and not seem like they're sold on one candidate. Absolutely.
Is it a concern about him?
No. I don't think so. I think people are going to take a look at what we've done. You saw his message yesterday, let's finish the job. We've only just begun to see the jobs that are going to be created from the infrastructure package, a bill that Republicans tried for years to get done. He got done in a bipartisan manner. We're going to see those investments continuing to get into communities across this country. We're going to see inflation come down. We're going to see the jobs continue. And you're going to see these unions. You have to remember, in 2020, there was a Democratic primary. The unions weren't all lined up behind President Biden right at the beginning. They took their time. They analyze the candidates, and this show of support and solidarity this early in the cycle is important to his presidency.
Jack, Joe Biden says he has a story to sell, so why are people seemingly not in a majority of buying this story right now? Why are we seeing this lag at his numbers if everything's going as well as the administration says it's going?
They're really not going that well. And you look at the last administration, you can say everything you want about Trump and the tweets, but this country and this economy was much better off. And when I saw that clip of President Biden talking about how, you know, they want to take your jobs, that is a ridiculous comment. The Republican Party wants growth. They want smaller government. They want more respect in the world. They want parents to have rights for their kids at school.
Our producer wants a commercial right now. So we thank you both, Jack and Nicole, for joining us live this Sunday morning. We're going to have you both back real soon.